Hey guys, just to let you know that this is a redux of our very first original podcast that Austen and I did. But Jay and I are doing it on a very full. So please check it out and tell us what you think. Welcome back to the Fast, as is now known, saga. I'm feeling fast. Hey everybody, welcome back to Movies and TV Shows on the Ball. And on this episode, my name is Steve.
And I'm Jay.
And on this episode, we are doing a sort of redux. If you've seen my videos on YouTube, my friend Austen and I did a kind of on our first podcast, we did a video on the first Fast and Furious films. Granted, we watched, I think, all 6 of them and then just kind of winged them. Because at that time, I think the 7th one was just about out. Now there's 10. Well, technically 11. But we're going to go to the one that started it all. 2001's The Fast and The Furious. So, Jay, I guess... So this film came out in 2001. Right. I was 13, so it was kind of... I think that's the beauty about me, is that it kind of hit me right in that sort of teen spot.
Right. This one was PG-13, so like you sort of grown up right along with
the Fast and Furious trilogy, series.
Franchise, yeah.
And you just can't, I guess the first thing, watching it now, how young everyone looks. Uh-huh. And you're like going, wait a minute, is that Vin Diesel? He looks so thin.
Right.
What was, I guess, was this your first time watching it? Or
so this was actually my first time watching The Fast and the Furious.
Out of all of them? Or
yeah,
is this,
no, the first time watching this first movie. Yeah.
Just the first movie? Or have you watched bits and pieces of
I have been, seen bits and scenes of bits and pieces. And I think the only other full movie I've seen is 7.
7? Oh, the Fast and Furious 7?
Yeah. Okay. So I've seen 1 and 7.
Well, when you said 7, I was thinking, whoa, the David Fincher 7? What I'm thinking?
Yeah.
With Brad Pitt. Right. But it's kind of interesting that it's been, I guess, 20. It'll be the 20th anniversary of the sequel to Fast and Furious this year.
Right.
Because the sequel came out in 2003.
Okay.
And this one came out in 2001, 2003, 2006, 2009, 2011, 2000. I just remember it just kind of, and I think they were really trying to get this one to come out in this new one, Fast X, in 2021.
Gotcha.
Or I think, because it was 10 years, 10 movies.
Right, but they got delayed a bit.
Yeah, because of COVID, yeah.
Right.
So Jay, I guess, so this film was, for me, do you want to start with the cast or the story, or how do you want to?
Yeah, we can start with the story. So I'd only seen, I'd seen 7, I'd seen the trailers. And so this one was a lot less of the over the top, action stuff, but it was more, sort of like a crime, undercover movie.
Well, a lot of people refer to. I think there was a film called Point Break.
That's another one I haven't seen yet.
Where I think it's got that one has, and it kind of has the same thing with Keanu Reeves in that film is an FBI agent. There's these surfers that are actually, it's just surfing and you just change the surfing to cars. But for some reason, this franchise ended up getting up to, 10 films.
Right.
And, to me, this film, what I liked about this one, kind of watching it again, you kind of can see the stepping stones for 7, now that you've seen them, I think watching them now, you're okay, I see the stepping stones for. This film was directed by Rob Cohen. Rob Cohen's best known for directing films such as Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, Dragon Heart, with I think it had Sean Connery.
Yeah.
Stealth, which and he directed the Vin Diesel led film Triple X.
Okay.
Not the porno, but it's just Triple X. Xander Cage, Triple X.
Wasn't he like some secret agent?
Yeah, it was like kind of this. Triple X was like taking James Bond meets Fast and the Furious. His other works include let's see, he was producer of Knight Rider. He's directed, he directed The Boy Next Door, which was this really like Jennifer Lopez like thriller. I watched it somewhat. But he was actually back in the 80s. He was a producer. He produced films such as Monster Squad, The Running Man, which was a Schwarzenegger film.
Yeah.
Bird on a Wire with Goldie Hawn and what's his name, Mr. Nobody.
It's the one I haven't seen either.
Oh. But apparently he's got that. He's directed Stealth, as I said, Triple X, The Skulls. That one had Paul Walker in it, and that came out like right at the same time. This also had Paul Walker. I guess you want to go through the cast?
Yeah, we can go through the cast.
Paul Walker, who I kind of know. I knew from this. I mean, this was sort of his franchise. Yeah. His and Vin Diesel's franchise. But you may know Paul Walker from such films as... let's see. Paul Walker was in Pleasantville.
Okay.
He played the TV boyfriend in the TV. Did you ever see Pleasantville?
No, I haven't seen Pleasantville.
Pleasantville was about them going into like a TV show of like the 50s. Right. It had your Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire.
Wow.
And it had what's her name? Reese Witherspoon.
Okay.
They play these kids, and where I'm going with this is Paul Walker played like one of the boyfriend. They go into the TV, and they are actually the characters, the brother and sister of the television show.
Okay.
And they bring color to the black and white world. But where I was going with this, Paul Walker plays the boyfriend of her. But where I've known him from was he was in She's All That.
Okay.
With Rachel Lee Cook. He played the bad boy in She's All That because he was the one that tells that he tells Freddie Prinze Jr. to go on a basically make her look like the prom queen. You've probably never seen it. But anyway, I'm just yeah. But he's kind of like the jerky character. But Paul Walker was in this film, and then you've got I Am Groot, Vin Diesel,
right?
Which he's made for this film. His last name was Diesel,
right?
And it's a car.
For cars.
It's made for cars, so he's perfect. You may remember Vin Diesel from such films, such as Chronicles of Riddick.
Right.
He was in I Am Groot in Guardians of the Galaxy. He was in pretty much all the Fast and the Furious films.
Right.
And he's been pretty much the producer of all the Fast and the Furious films since then, and producer of the Triple X. He did Triple X and Triple X Return of Xander Cage. Riddick was the other one. His other he's been 56 films. He's been in other than the Chronicles, he was in Saving Private Ryan. Let's see. He played the voice of the Iron Giant.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
He was in Saving Private Ryan, Iron Giant, Pitch Black. Did you ever see that movie?
Yeah, that's it.
He Can See in the Dark, and he was in the Chronicles of Riddick.
It was like a Chronicles of Riddick.
Was the sequel.
I thought it was a prequel. Or a sequel. I don't know. They're related.
Yeah, they're related. Yeah. He was in A Man of Heart. And he was in The Pacifier. His other films include, but he's pretty much, this is his franchise.
Right.
His and Paul Walker's franchise.
Yeah.
Then you had Michelle Rodriguez as Letty. Michelle Rodriguez is pretty much best known for her.
I recognized her from the Resident Evil movie.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's. She was in, her other roles include, she was in Avatar.
Okay.
She played the one of the pilots of the robot Avatar things, and she's like, she's the one that says, this is wrong. We shouldn't, kill the blue people. Right. The Naviv. Her other anti Fast and the Furious films include. She was in Machete Kills.
Okay, I haven't seen that one.
She did voice work for Call of Duty Black Ops, Resident Evil. Right. I think she was in all Resident Evil films. She was in an episode of Lost. She was in Avatar. Let's see. She did voice work for Halo 2, the video game. She was in SWAT.
Okay, I haven't seen that one either.
Which was based on a television show. But she was in that. I think her and Jordan Brewster, who we'll get to, didn't have their driver's license when they filmed this movie.
Okay.
So Jordan Brewster, I'll get to her next.
Was that the
Vin
Diesel's sister?
Vin Diesel's sister's Letty is her boyfriend. Is Vin Diesel's girlfriend, or Vin Diesel. Letty Michelle Rodriguez plays Vin Diesel's Dom Toretto's girlfriend and future wife. And so she was in Jordan Brewster. She was in The Faculty in 1998. She was in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre at the beginning. Let's see. What other film? She was in the television series for Lethal Weapon. She was in episodes of Chuck. She had an uncredited role in Win a Date with Tad Hamilton with Josh Duhamel and Topher Grace.
Okay.
All My Children. But, most of these, she was in Annapolis. So, Tyrese Gibson, who's going to be in the second one, we'll get to him in the sequel. He was in a film with James Franco, who played Green Goblin.
Right. In
a movie called Annapolis, which was about, Annapolis, the thing. The Annapolis, the school.
Oh, like the Navy Academy?
The Navy Academy. Yeah. And so they made a movie about that, or just and she was in that. But really, I think I do kind of feel like now looking at it, a lot of these sort of, now that you've got 11 of these films, or 12.
Right.
Technically. Well, no, 11, technically. 10, if you want to count them all. But, there was these films, that you kind of know that they become part of this series.
Right.
Let's see who else. That's ludicrous. Do you want to keep going with the cast?
No, I think that's sort of the main
cast. Yeah. I mean, we'll get into it a little bit later, but those are sort of the main cast. Let's talk about the movie. What was your thoughts? I guess this is your first time watching it.
It was better than I expected.
Really?
Yeah, I was expecting sort of just
non-stop driving,
cars and explosions. But there was a little bit of like,
more crime. Of a well, it's more. I've noticed watching this one. It's more of the. Oh, the other guy is. Did you see Silence of the Lambs?
No.
You've never seen Silence of the Lambs?
No, I have not.
Did you? Okay, so the guy that plays the Brian Paul Walker's boss, who's like, where are you? That one with the glasses?
Right, yeah.
He plays Buffalo Bill and Silence of the Lambs.
Okay.
So, I mean, I like to kind of go the Troy McClure kind of thing.
Right.
But let's get into the film. So what I liked about, so we're kind of, you kind of can see watching it after watching this came out in 2001.
Right.
So this film was pretty much closer here. This film was pretty much like, I think it was kind of a shot in the dark for Universal, because they probably didn't know what they were going to get themselves into. I mean, it's the seventh one hit $1 billion. Right. I think it's like a $2 billion. Because I think the seventh and eighth one both hit $1 billion a piece. So I mean, they know what they're getting, and like once you get to Hobbs and Shaw, they kind of know what it is. But I looked at this one because we kind of winged it the first time, because we watched like with Austen and I when we tried to do it.
Right.
We watched all seven of them and then went back and watched the first one. I like to take it and go back and forth, but I can kind of see the blueprints for the first one.
Right.
And I this is sort of, because so basically the story goes. So the story goes like this. So we have Dominic Toretto.
Right.
He is with his group.
Right.
Well, it starts out with like. No, it starts out with these
the heist.
These street racers
right.
are doing heists. And so what do you think of the heist? Let's kind of go with the beginning of the film.
A little
kind of
far-fetched. Yeah.
But you kind of.
With like the harpoon gun.
Well, yeah. Well, wait till you get to 7 and 8, and
okay.
when they're like flying out of cars, flying out of the sky and going to space and stuff.
Right.
Just wait. I mean, you'll watch it and be like, these are tamed compared to the what's ahead. But like, what I liked about it, because I guess. There's part of me, because I think when this film came out, I was 13. So there's part of me that still can take myself out of the realism of this film. Like, okay, I can stand disbelief for an hour and a half.
Right.
So what I like about it is they're driving these three cars, and this guy is in this truck going doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. I'm driving. And these three cars show up. One of them goes underneath
that
semi-truck, which is pretty cool. Which I'm like, this is like, I think on the DVD it says these acts are done for.
Oh, don't try this.
Don't try these at home. Yeah. And so he's going underneath the thing, and then they shoot a harpoon gun at the window and break it, and they try to steal some. DVD players, which seems like
today.
Well, I remember. Well, if you remember, do you remember? Like, I remember Dad having a laptop with a DVD player on it.
Right.
And we rented a movie. I do remember. This is gonna go down memory lane, but Lost in Space, the 1998 film. I think you just rented it just to see if it works. And here we are. We've got this big screen box television, and we're all huddled around the laptop computer screen watching a DVD. We thought it was so cool.
Right.
So DVD players were all the rage back in 2001. And now you're like going.
Trying to throw them to you for like a nickel.
Yeah, or something. Yeah. Well, times they. I mean, this film is 20.
Yeah, it's old.
20, what is it? 2001, 2023, 22 years old.
Right.
So I could kind of...
Back when DVD players were worth their weight in gold.
Yes, exactly. So, anyway, so there's still, and I like the harpoon, shoots the harpoon, and, you have, like, the guy that's trying to...
They go up and, like, sort of beat up on the truck driver and then shoot him with a dart gun.
Yeah, exactly. Which makes no sense. So they steal some DVDs, and then when we meet Brian O'Connor.
Right.
I love the fact that Brian is sitting in he's in the parking lot. He's like, vroom, 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 vroom. And then he just trying to speed around.
Right, see how fast his
car can go. And what I mean, what do you think of Paul Walker as? I think he kind of owns. I think now looking at the franchise, I think you kind of can see like there are their characters. Right. I mean,
Yeah, it's sort of like it's like he's, split loyalties between like his car racing.
Yeah, but
people he's undercover with versus his job.
Yeah, that's kind of what it is. But like, what I kind of noticed is like, so he gets his car, then what was interesting about it is he's driving and then he gets pulled over,
right,
and then they like make it look like he got arrested for taillight or something, or not taillight, but for speeding or something like that. And then they arrest him, and then they go to the house.
And that's when they
reveal that he's a cop.
Right, because after then you don't know that he's
undercover. But what I liked, because the film starts. I'm trying to think. The film starts out where he goes. He's in the parking lot. He's driving. He then goes to.
He eventually ends up in Toretto's store because he likes.
No. Did he race him in the beginning?
At first he's there, and then he has beef with his crew, and they start
no, because he's eating the tuna sandwich.
Yeah.
He's eating the tuna sandwich. I love the tuna sandwich. Is like he goes in there and you kind of assume that he's been coming in for a while because she's like, so what are you gonna order? As like.
She knows he doesn't want crust on it.
Tuna with crust. It's like it's the same tuna you had last time, and it sucks today, and it sucks tomorrow. And it'll be the same, and it's same terrible. And then Vin Diesel's crew, Dom Toretto's crew is gonna show up, and they're like is it not Jesse? Who is it? It's he'll
Vince?
show up. Vince.
Yeah.
Vince is like, what's this guy doing here? Why is he, what's this guy doing here? He's like, well, he likes the sandwiches. And then he's like going, I like the tuna sandwiches. He's like, nobody likes the tuna sandwiches. And when you're dealing with, us. And so Paul Brian and Vince
get
into a fight, and they're like, rolling in the ground and punching and everything, and then Toretto, who is basically in the back, doesn't have a care in the world about what's going on, and then his sister's like, Dom, get out there! They're tearing them apart.
Right.
And then Dom shows up. He walks in and says, "He was in my face." And then I love what he says to Vin, or what Vin says, or Dom says to Brian. He says, "I'm in your face."
Right.
And then he's like going, "Check him." And then like they find he's got ID, and it's like, I love the line. He says, "Brian Spooner? This sounds like a serial killer's name. Is that what you are? A serial killer?" And
no.
And what was your thought? What was your thoughts? This is your first time watching it, right?
Yeah.
What was your thoughts on Brian and? Because I think I'm looking. The thing about it is I'm looking at it as it. I've seen this when I was 13. I kind of, I wouldn't say grew up with it, but sort of. It's became part of my pop cultural consciousness.
Right.
And you've never seen, or you saw the seventh one.
I saw the seventh one
with me, but watching the first one and you've seen the seventh one, is there any kind of connect? You got a little bit clearer connection, or once we get through the series, you'll be like,
I feel like I'm missing some connections because 7 was sort of crazy with helicopters.
Yeah. You're like going, where are the helicopters? This is really slow.
I can't even remember what they were doing. They're like saving the world.
Saving the world. Yeah. There's the God's Eye, I think, or something.
This one's like DVD players.
DVD player. So you went from a series, if you think about it, you went from a series that's completely on, you went series that was basically about street racing, underground street racing, and still in DVD players
to like superheroes,
super spy stuff.
Right.
What? But like let's keep going with the story. So basically, they have a fight. Dom gets into it and says, "I'm in your face," and then we find out that his cover, Brian's cover, is. He works at an auto parts store, Harry's auto parts store.
Right.
And a lot of, I guess, the street racing world, everybody knows who's Harry. Because he goes back to, he says, "You work for Harry, don't you?" "Yeah, I just started." And he's like,
"Not anymore.
Not anymore, you just got fired." And then he's like, he shows up to Harry's place. And Harry, they've got nice cars for 2001. And he's like, Dom's been saying this. He says, "What did he say? What did he say?" And then you have,
so I think at that point, Paul Walker's character, Brian, is getting out. He wants a bunch of nitrous because he wants to go race that night.
Yeah.
Right.
He's like, race at night, and then what I love is that scene when we were talking about it in the movie.
Oh, the transition.
I like the transition where we see sort of like it's the day, well, not daylight, but like it slowly, goes down to the night.
Right.
And all these cars show up, and then there is a scene where they've got like radio communication. One of the guys parks and says, "All right, we've got it blocked off." And then the pizza man shows up.
Right.
That is the director who did a cameo, and he says, "Goddamn street lasers."
Right.
And what was your thoughts on the? Because I feel like, because Austen and I did this one kind of because we said we were gonna watch the first, and when Austen and I watched them. I feel like the first one dealing with the street racing, because I feel like this film needs to have a plot, because if it's just street racing, it's funner anyway, but it needs to have something.
Right.
And what I liked about the street racing scene is that they, spray paint their
starting
lineup, and then you see everybody's car pulls up. You have Vin Diesel, who's too lazy because he's got a remote control in his car for a stereo, where he just clicks, beep, beep, clicks it, and then he's got the speakers in the back and goes boom, 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 boom.
Right.
And then you have the guy who's playing. I love
PlayStation.
He's got the PlayStation 2 in his car, and he's playing a racing car game while he's driving. And then you got Ja Rule.
Uh-huh.
And the thing about Ja Rule was, he was in trivia. When I looked at the trivia, Ja Rule was offered the role. He was supposed to be the ludicrous role throughout the entire series, but he turned it down because he wanted to start Murder Inc., which was his rap label.
Gotcha.
And I bet you any amount of money, 22 years later, he is probably kicking him. Well, 22 years later, he's probably kicking himself after all these years. After it's a $2 billion franchise.
I think you might have said it's only a $6 billion.
$6 billion franchise, yeah. But like Ja Rule shows up, and there's that, and Ja Rule is like this. He kind of makes a cameo where he's like, there's that like, because there's something, and I think the film franchise will keep kind of having it, but like there's street racing culture, that's in the first one. They pull up, and the car. Anyway, where was it?
Right.
So they pull up, and I like how each of them have their cars, and there's that really good scene where you see Vin Diesel, kind of looking, and then you see like the rest of the car, Paul Walker, or I'm gonna just call him, or Brian. I know, this is same thing that happened in Mr. Sunday Movie when he was reviewing these. He was like, kept saying Paul Walker, and he's like, Brian. Yeah, I mean, you get kind of used to knowing these guys. So Brian is sort of like, he's got his car, and he pulls up, and he says, I don't have any money on me, but I do have my pink slip and the deed to my car.
Right.
And he says, and if I win, I get the money and the respect. And he says, it doesn't matter if you win. No. Or he says something about like, okay, but this is, and it's more of him being in the culture of the racing. So they all, and then I love Ja Rule, because there's that scene where Ja Rule, she says, if you win, you get me, but if you don't win, if you win, you get both of us, but if you just finish, I'll be your girlfriend.
Right.
But I love it where he loses, and he goes like, hey honey, how's it going? And she's like, you didn't win.
You went first, you last.
Yeah. What do you think of the street racing? I just want to get your opinion on it.
I guess the street racing didn't super excite me too much, but
I think if I was, I look at it two ways. I think now, looking at the film with having 10, 11 films now in the franchise,
right?
I'm looking at the blueprints
right.
for now watching it. I'm watching it in two glasses. One glass, I'm looking at it as, here's the blueprints for the franchise.
Right.
Now I'm looking at it as, I saw this when I was 13 years old. This is how I feel like, oh, okay, I understand it now. I mean, it's not as action-packed. I mean, it's action-packed, because we'll get more into it once the story goes.
Right.
But, like, I can kind of see the blueprints for the next franchise, or the franchise itself. So anyway, they race. Paul Walker,
loses.
Brian, he's got his
the nitrous,
and he's trying to get the nitrous, and his like computer screen is messed up, and he hits it, and then Vin Diesel, Don Toretto,
right,
who is in like one of the smallest car, like when he's in that red car, he's in the smallest car. It looks like he's too big for that car,
Right.
But so they're driving, and then Vin Diesel,
Toretto.
John Toretto does the drive and stare. Right. He's like driving, and he does that stare thing. And then, so they get into, Vin Diesel Dom wins,
right?
And Brian pulls up, and his car's like smoking, and Jesse says, "You have fun," and opens the hatchback, and he says, "Dude, I almost had you," and he says, "You almost had me," you never had me. Because you never had your car. Yeah, kind of basically. It is kind of like that with Ricky Bobby. And then, what was... I just want to let you...
Okay. I mean, yeah, I guess this, it's sort of important to the story. But, sort of like some of the effects I felt a little bit dated.
Yeah, but it's 2000. But you're also looking at a film that's 22 years old.
Or sort of like they do like a weird like fisheye lens driving around.
Yeah.
But then soon after the race finishes, then the cops start coming.
Yeah, well they're like cops, and then I love it because it's like watching moths, pouring gasoline on insects because they just all squirry about, and the cops show up, and then what I love is you see so like they all run off, and they get in their cars. Dom drives down the road, drives up to a parking garage, parks his car.
Like no one's seen him.
No one. It's like fine. He puts on his jacket. He walks out, and then police car shows up. Toretto, we got you. And then there's like, oh shit! He starts running down the alley, and then good old Brian pulls up and says, "Get in!" And then he's like going. And then, I felt so bad because one of our neighbors actually had the green car from the first Fast and the Furious movie.
Oh, he did.
Oh, well, he didn't have the exact one, but he had like a replica
close.
of it.
Yeah.
And I just remember, because so he gets into the car, and he gets into a...
sort of escape the police.
No, he escapes the police. Yeah, he escapes the police, gets in Brian's car, then a bunch of people, a gang on some bikes tell Brian to pull over, and they pull into a Chinese restaurant, and they get out of the car, and they get out of the car, and it's Diamond Face from Die Another Day.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you've ever seen that.
Yeah.
Because that's who he is. That's who.
With that Pierce Brosnan.
Pierce Brosnan. He plays... Oh, God, what's his name?
The guy who can't sleep, so he has to live out his dreams or something.
No. I'm talking about the guy that plays... No, that's the actor. Right. But the guy that plays... What's the character's name for... I'm trying to think. I think it's...
Oh, in Fast and the Furious?
In Fast and Furious.
I can't remember.
It's... of Toretto. Brian's kind of the antagonist. Well, more of the side antagonist.
Yeah, he's got his own like racing crew. Yeah.
And there's that line where, because he says, Dom, you need to do, Dom and they have a argument. And then they drive back, or they go, all right, that's the argument. They drive back, and they go, they take out their
submachine
guns and
shoot
the
Brian's
car, and then they're like walking, and they're like, and it's
the nitrous,
and then it goes, and the poor car is destroyed.
Right.
So then he's like, we've got a long walk to go to, and so they walk on. And then I guess then they get back to
a house party.
The house party, which is Vin Diesel, Don Toretto's house, and Don Toretto.
Mad.
No, they get a cab.
Yeah,
they get a cab, and then they didn't walk all the way to the house. They get a cab. They get out of the cab, and they go in, and and then what's his name? It's not Eddie. Vince says, "What's the Buster doing here?" And then Vin Diesel or John Toretto says, "The Buster kept me out of handcuffs. That's the reason why I'm here."
And that's sort of how Brian becomes part of the crew.
And then he does say a line which I like, which is kind of a great car line. Not a car line, but it's a car thing. He says, "You can have any beer you want, as long as it's a Corona." Because in Henry Ford had a famous line of saying, "You can have any car you want as long as it's black."
Gotcha.
So that's kind of car thing. So anyway, so he's kind of been smitten by Mia, who is Don Toretto's sister.
Right.
And Don Toretto is in fact in a relationship with
Lefty, right?
Letty. Lefty.
I don't
know. Letty, who is Michelle Rodriguez. And what I kind of noticed is that, because if you remember going back to the thing, the first race, Don Toretto's a little bit of a flirt.
Okay.
Because you can remember where he's kind of hanging out with these girls on each side of his arm,
vaguely, yeah.
And she's like, "I smell skank."
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, she's very protective of Dom, but you can kind of see they have a really big relationship.
Okay, gotcha.
They mature into a relationship and mature in the movies. So anyway, so Vince is a bit pissed that he got his beer taken away from him, and Brian gets to drink his beer.
Right.
And Brian notices not Letty. What's
Vince?
No, his sister.
Mia
notices Mia and starts off a conversation. She's like, "Thank you for the tuna sandwich," and she's like, "No, I'm just saying,
yeah."
They kind of have a conversation. What was your thoughts on their kind of Vin and Vin, kind of how Vin becomes Vin and Brian's relationship in this one? Is it kind of rockier than rocky and then kind of gets better? I guess you haven't really seen the most of the franchise,
but it's sort of like, I think, somewhat, I don't know, cliche. Where it's like, the undercover guy, like distrusted, but it gains the trust, and then suddenly they have like the big reveal, and like, I can't believe you were lying to me.
But like, we'll get into it once we get to the kind of climax. But I kind of noticed that it's not as that revealing. I just kind of I think he, and you can kind of tell that it is that I've gotten closer and closer into it.
Right.
My thoughts on what I kind of, but so anyway, they kind of have so Buster took me out of took me out of handcuffs. And then they basically, I like how you can see that he's the father, or kind of like that, who's his, the one that's the mechanic? He says has
Was
fun.
it Jesse?
Jesse.
Yeah.
Vin Diesel,
Toretto
sees Jesse as sort of his little brother.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
Can you kind of see that?
Yeah.
What was your thoughts on the Fast family in this one? I mean, I would like to kind of watch all 7 of the films.
Right.
And just to see kind of... Because I can kind of see where you're coming from. Whereas, I see these films as like, okay, I've seen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then it's like you seeing like Star Wars Episode 5 and going, oh, it's like, or not Episode 5, but like seeing the X-Men movies and going like, who's this guy? Who's this? Right. Or being stuck in, like watching First Class and then watching X-Men Days of Future Past, or Out of Order, the kind of,
right.
Or Indiana Jones Out of Order,
gotcha,
kind of thing. But what was your thoughts on
their crew? Or
crew,
I guess sort of Vin Diesel sort of.
I think you said they reminded. I think I said they reminded. We talked about Rocket Power.
Yeah, they reminded me sort of the kids of Rocket Power, sort of all sort of jerks.
They're not. They're cool.
They're sort of jerks.
Just sort of jerks. We should do Rocket Power for our next podcast, so you can just go like. Anyway, but they're. I think they're sort of. I think I think they are pretty much like. The first one, I think, is kind of a. Really, the first one is sort of a shot in the dark.
Yeah.
You don't. But I'm kind of watching it, kind of like, I can see, now that we've got 10 of these things, it makes more. That makes sense, but I can kind of see they've gotten better for what that is.
Right.
What was your thoughts? So let's finish the plot before we.
Yeah.
So anyway. So he says the Buster got me out of handcuffs. He gives them the beer. They drink it. They watch a movie, and Brian helps Mia with the kitchen in the kitchen.
Right. Yeah. I think they have sort of. I don't know if I'd call it like a montage, but they have pretty long time with like Brian and them sort of getting closer together.
Yeah.
With the crew and stuff.
The crew. Well, there is that line, there is that line. I do like that scene where they do that. You think Brian looks at him as, or has that idea before really getting to know them, as being very. I wouldn't say as like, kind of surprised, like when he goes to the barbecue, and Jesse goes and grabs a chicken wing,
right,
and Vin Diesel and Toretto says, because you reach for the chicken, you have to say grace. And there's a look on Brian's face that's like, really,
Right.
And then I love how he kind of prays to the car gods,
right,
if you will. So what was your thoughts? So that kind of, and then you also have, I guess,
Toretto?
No, Brian. Brian really as Brian gets into the good graces of Toretto, I think. What's his name? Not Brian. What's his name? It's
Vince. Or?
Not Vince. No, is it Vince? It's the other guy.
The other part of the team.
No, the guy that's like the bus. The guy that brings the food, and then he gets pissed because what's Brian doing here?
I thought that was Vince.
That's Vince. Okay, that is Vince. That's Vince. Vince gets, yeah.
Yeah, because they sort of have a rivalry.
But I think Vince feels like Brian. There's something iffy about Brian.
Right.
But Vin Diesel doesn't really kind of, say it. Anyway, Vin Diesel doesn't kind of says he kind of still trusts him. So anyway, they have barbecue, and they're hanging out, eating chicken, and she's eating chicken, and then Brian Dominic Toretto goes to the garage, or what? Where are we in the story? I'm trying to.
I guess you were talking about.
I didn't take notes on this one.
Gotcha. You're talking about the chicken scene?
No, it's the chicken. They ate dinner.
Yeah, they have dinner. Then they have this scand they're doing dishes.
Where the dishes. And they're watching a movie.
Right.
He's making popcorn. And Brian and Mia and Vince sees Brian looks like Vince kind of puts two and two together and sees that Brian seems to be flirting with the with me, or he kind of says something like he says talking to the punk, and then she says, "Why don't you take me to dinner tomorrow night at the restaurant?" And he's like, he gets mad. Vince gets mad at kind of seeing that.
Yeah.
And then Brian takes me out, but before that, Vin has to, or Toretto says, "If you break her heart, I'll break your neck."
Right.
Which, like, every brother should say to his sister's potential mate. What was your thoughts on Mia and Paul? Mia and Brian's relationship.
I mean, I thought it was. I guess it didn't. I don't know if it was super essential to the story.
But you kind of. Well, I guess you can kind of see the. I think a lot of this film now, watching it.
Yeah.
You can see the seeds being planted for
I guess I'm not.
Franchise.
I don't know where stuff is going for.
Yeah. Well, because I guess this is your first time, and I'm like, well, I've seen them all.
Right.
Yeah. So she says, so take me out. So and then Mia and Brian go out to the Mexican restaurant, and as they're talking, Mia pretty much explains. We kind of get the backstory of she's with her brother. She hung out with her friends. Letty was kind of her best friend growing up, and how they were still all in the they kind of became a crew. Right. I wouldn't say they were the family, but they were a crew. Because I think that they become more of a family throughout the thing. But as you watch them, but so you can kind of see that Mia is kind of a fan, or Mia and Brian kind of start to have a connection, and he kind of understands where they're going,
right?
Or where how their the Fast family's backstory is. So what was your thoughts on, or like, and then I kind of like what I liked about it is that I guess this is the kind of stuff that, like this, I don't want to say this is the kind, but I felt like this cast, what do you think of the cast?
I thought it was pretty good, I guess. I don't think there's anyone I didn't like. I don't think there was anyone I really thought was a bad role or anything.
Yeah. I think everybody brought what they were given, and I really think that this film franchise is a gamble. Was a gamble.
For Universal, yeah.
For Universal, now they're kind of like, oh, it's money in the bag.
Right.
But at the time, it was like, but I think this hit the teen spot where it is. So anyway, let's see. The storyline goes. So after dinner, they plant, or well, how does it go? They plant drugs on.
I don't remember them planting drugs on anybody.
No, not drugs, but they plant something on. Who's a Japanese guy?
Oh, Johnny Tran.
Johnny Tran. Don't they?
No, they say.
Where are we at? I'm trying to think.
I guess you just talked about.
Mia
going on a date. Yeah.
Mia on a date, and then does race wars happen, or
that happens? Yeah.
That happens real late.
Right. So I guess the night after going on a date, Brian gets a call from the police like, we're going to move on Johnny Tran. And that night. And then Johnny Tran is having lunch or breakfast with his family. Right.
And I kind of like that scene just because I always kind of think Johnny Tran, they're keeping this stuff from, because where Johnny Tran comes from, who is pretty much the antagonist of this film, of the first film.
Right.
Where, and I think the second one they have, the antagonist of, but he's more of the main antagonist of this film. What I do like, or the antagonist, but I feel like it's the whole street racing thing has been underground, don't you think?
Yeah.
Because like remember so they're gonna move on Tran, and he's kind of living pretty,
he's
kind
like
of
in a mansion or something.
Mansion, and he's kind of got a pretty good family, like not a pretty good family, but a good family, rich family, and they're surprised when like these SWAT team people come and arrest them. But what I mean, and I liked how, and then they arrest them, but I like how when it's a montage, and they play the, like some
like rock and
roll, like kind of that heavy metal stuff. Jay, what was your thoughts on, or did you ask me something? Because I'm trying to...
Okay, gotcha. I guess maybe later on, I'm curious, how would you rank the movies you've seen so far?
Out of all of them?
Yeah, like where does this one stand? Like is this like one of the better ones, or is this like...
I feel like it's a good start. It's a gamble start.
Right.
I felt like this one... okay, let me finish the story.
Okay,
so, yeah, okay. Okay, so they arrest Tran. He drives and tells Toretto that the police came and arrested him. And he's like, it's Street Wars, yeah. Well, let's talk about Street Wars for a second.
Yeah.
What was your thought? Here's what I liked. What they did was, it's out in the desert. There's cars everywhere.
Right.
I mean, you can kind of see what the franchise has got. There's cars everywhere. And I like that, and you can kind of see the crew is with, but there's like, it's a whole different culture with the race wars.
Right. And they sort of do races.
Races, yeah. I liked it. I mean, I liked the race wars scene. Then you have who's the mechanic who's got ADD? Jesse. So the mechanic has ADD, but he
bets his car.
He bets his car, but he bets his car on
his dad's
car. His dad's car. He bets his dad's car on to race Ricky. I want to say Ricky Tran.
No, Johnny
Tran. Ricky Tran was in Rush Hour 2. Johnny Tran. And Johnny Tran is like, race me. And he's like, okay, I will. And he's they race. And, it's still Buster. He hit the exhaust too soon. Or the NOS too soon. And he loses the race.
Right.
And
he sort of freaks out and
drives off. And then Ricky, then Vin Diesel, Toretto goes after Jesse, right?
No,
am I putting it?
He doesn't go after Jesse. He sort of gets in a fight with Johnny Tran because he says someone ratted me out, and he blames Toretto.
Yeah.
And then I think later than out is when Toretto goes off to do his last heist. And that's where Brian does his big reveal to Mia
that he's secretly a cop.
And
that's sort of the liar reveal, because Mia sort of feels like she trusts, but it's genuine, and it's kind of interesting that I kind of think it's interesting now that we kind of watched in this one, and She's All That. Paul Walker's character reveals that Freddie Prinze Jr. has been messing with Rachel Lee Cook's head about the bets.
Okay.
And I always kind of, the liar reveal is kind of in the same film with Paul Walker, 2 films with Paul, but that's just, movie math, whatever. I liked what they did with Vin, or what, so Jet, but she's like, where are we?
I guess we're just about to get on the Five Giant Train, like doing the last job, and like Brian does his reveal to Mia, like I need your help to find your brother, right.
and she's like, okay, I'll help you, but you lie to me. I can't believe you lying to me, kind of thing, and then Vin Diesel or Toretto. Toretto goes after Tran, right?
Oh no, they're going after a truck. I guess they're going after more.
He's going after more DVD players.
Yeah,
can't get enough. Can't get enough. And so they do this really. What do you think of the because I like what they do. If you remember in the beginning of the movie, they like. Did I already mention this? They go
under the semi truck. Yeah.
So they do that, and they do another. They do another heist, but the heist doesn't work that well.
Yeah, this time
because he's got a gun. And what do you think of the way it was shot? Not the film way. It was not like the. Well, it was a lot more.
Had a lot more tension with like, oh no, who's going to get shot or what's going on.
Well, and it was a lot more close-ups, and you could kind of tell like. You could see there's more. I think watching it as a 13-year-old, I was like, oh,
right.
Is Vin Diesel is John Toretto gonna make it? Find out next on the same Fast channel.
Right.
So anyway, we've been talking for an hour. So let me finish. So anyway, they go into so they kind of do this. Do the truck run.
Right.
The driver of the truck shoots Vin.
Right.
And Vin falls out of the car.
And he's just hanging on by his whatever grapple gun.
Grappling gun. And then
the truck sort of hits, is it not Lefty? Who's...
Letty.
Letty hits Letty's car and like flips her and crashes it. And shoots Vin Diesel's tires out.
Mm-hmm.
It like shoots his engine, so he has to back out. And so then...
they do that jump. Or no.
Yeah, well then like sort of... Vince is like, oh no one's going to save Vince. But then here comes Paul Walker to save
the day, yeah. Let's get through the plot, then we're gonna find our like favorite scenes and stuff. But anyway, so they go through the car, or they save Vince.
Right.
Vince is lying on the ground bleeding, and then Brian calls for a helicopter, and this is a liar reveal.
Right.
Or Vin Diesel's like, or not Vin Diesel, Tommy Toretto is like, I can't believe you lied, and so he basically fights or can't believe it and drives off.
Right, with the rest of his
crew. And then.
So then. We sort of meet back up with Vin Diesel back at his house, where we see him walking out with a shotgun, and we see
and like they're like, Dom, don't do it, don't do it, drop the gun. And Dom, I think you kind of feel like, there is a moment where Dom like the other thing I want to talk about is that Dom, Buffalo Bill, Detective Buffalo Bill, I'm just gonna, because he was in Silence of the Lambs of Buffalo Bill, who plays the sergeant, says, Dom, you know that he beat somebody with a tire engine.
Right.
And then you find out the kind of origin that it wasn't really, it was just the knack, I just kept he just kind of lost his temper.
Right.
And beat the hell out of the guy. But you also can tell that they are kind of, both him and,
Brian?
No, not the Brian. Both him and, or both teams. I guess his villain, the Johnny Tran. They're both pretty violent.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just wanted to mention that. So anyway, he calls up for backup, and he finds out that he's a police officer. Paul Walker calls for backup. Brian calls for backup. Vin Diesel or Toretto finds out that Toretto finds out that Brian is a cop, and just can't believe it. So he goes back to his house and gets his shotgun.
Right, yeah, because he's wanting to go out and look for Jesse.
Jesse.
Right.
Yeah, Jesse's scared, man.
Uh-huh.
And then
Jesse shows up, asking for help.
And then a bike shows up with a machine gun and goes...
Right.
And he's like...
Yeah, and shoots
Jesse, and then...
And then sort of both Toretto and Brian go off to go chase the bikers.
And then they...
I think we sort of have, sort of a chase. Toretto sort of hits one of the bikers off a cliff, and then Brian just shoots the other one.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty... what do you think the action of, just the scenes? I mean,
it's good. No, I like the scenes. The only thing is, sort of weird how they're sort of just shooting in the streets.
Yeah.
Feels
a little bit... I think you can take the surrealism out.
Right, yeah.
It just kind of... I think you can't go come on, think about it this way. This is tame compared to, going to space.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah. And so they sort of take out both the bikers, and then they sort of immediately turns into an hour back to where Brian is now chasing Toretto again. After the sort of... Because they were both wanted to sort of... I guess they wanted to avenge Jesse's
death. And
they sort of pull up and they're going to do one final drag race.
And then they... Woo, 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 woo. And is that the one where they go through
beat the train? Right. And so they both have this climactic drag race where they both beat the train just barely. And then all of a sudden Toretto hits a truck that pulls out in front of him.
Yeah. I feel like there was a lot more action than the first time I saw it.
Okay.
Or there was a lot more stuff in it.
Right.
Than I thought when I kind of watched, when I watched it the first time doing this review. Because I think we're talking for an hour, and I think when Austen and I did the video, we only talked for 8 minutes.
Right.
Just because we winged it. Because I think we were like, I think this happened, and this happened. But I like this one. I feel like it was a good start to the franchise. I give it... What would you give it? Do you want to give our ratings?
Yeah, I'd give this a 7. It was a way better, movie-wise than I thought it was going to be. Because I sort of liked the little, undercover plot and stuff.
Well, I did kind of feel like it worked. I think... Here's the thing I think you look at it. It's like watching any movie with a franchise... You kind of get inoculated, but you kind of let the first one be itself, since it's already part of, when you watch The Terminator.
Right.
You kind of go, or whatever, or any franchise, like the Iron Man movies. You kind of go, okay, well, this is the one that started it all. So, I feel like there are some, so it's perfect. There was some stuff that wasn't perfect. But I kind of can see... it was tamed from what we're going to get.
Right.
So I give it... As a fan, I'll give it a 7.
Okay.
As a film, I'll give it. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous if you think about it too hard. But
those DVD players.
Yeah. I did like the things I did like about it is I liked. I felt like this one, the racing was a little bit more. I liked how they, they blocked off everything for the racing.
Right.
And I feel like this. I mean, it's a good one for when I think if my 13-year-old self would probably say this was a 10.
Gotcha.
Just because I think I was in the right mindset.
Right.
It's PG-13, and the 13 means 13.
Right.
That's kind of how I felt about this film, but watching it, I could see the stepping stones for the ridiculousness, the amazingly ridiculousness that we're gonna get. I mean, we're gonna get tanks. We're gonna get helicopters. They're gonna go to space.
Wow.
But anyway, so that is it for our fast review of Fast and the Furious. I'm Steve.
And I'm Jay.
Please like and subscribe if you would. Up next is...
I don't know. What's up next, Steve?
I guess they just announced they're doing season 6 for Cobra Kai.
Oh, dang. Okay.
So we're gonna have to get Cobra Kai.
Right.
We're gonna. So thank you guys. Have a good one. Peace. Bye.